We're going to talk a little bit about social equity because with 1 out of 3 citizens qualifying, Minnesota is on the path to having America's most populous social equity licensure program to date. What's the worst that could happen? The Minnesota Reformer's Christopher Ingram reported that between 30 and 40% of Minnesota adults could plausibly qualify as social equity applicants for cannabis business licenses, according to a Reformer estimate based on the new equity rules approved by legislature this year. Ingram says that much like many other states before, lawmakers initially created the category as a way to prioritize business applications for Minnesotans who have been harmed by marijuana prohibition in the past. Senator Lindsey Port of Burnsville, the chief author of the Senate, told the Star Tribune in March that it is the state's responsibility to undo the harm of prohibition. That means we have to aim the benefits proportionately at the communities that were harmed, end quote. But the social equity criteria written into law now includes a number of economic and social measures that go far beyond individuals and communities who have been targeted for past enforcement. They now encompass those Minnesotans who have lived in for 5 years in a neighborhood where more than 20% of people are in poverty or on food stamps, or where the median home income is less than 80% of statewide or metro area, or has lived in 5 years in a neighborhood with high levels of social vulnerability as defined by the CDC, or is a military veteran or member of the National Guard, or was convicted of a cannabis offense in the past, or had a close family member convicted of an offense. But wait, there's more. If you also manage a small farm with less than $100,000 in annual sales, you too can qualify for social equity in cannabis for Minnesota. Or there's more, there really is. Have lived in 5 years in a neighborhood that has seen a disproportionate rate of prior cannabis enforcement, as determined in a forthcoming study, not even out yet, by the Office of Cannabis Management. Representative Nolan West. Right, exactly. You too can get a social equity license. So, the lone Republican member of the conference committee, Nolan West of Blaine, said that he hashed out differences between the House and Senate on this year's bill. And the Republicans supported the idea of granting social equity status to individuals with prior cannabis convictions and military veterans. But then they tried to loop in all these other groups that weren't very well defined. And it's because they really wanted to put race in the bill. The whole point of the fucking bill is for race. So I don't know, man. Numbers for the first 3 items on this CVS receipt long list of qualifiers can be estimated using federal data from the Census Bureau and the CDC. Residents of more than 1/3 of the state's 1,504 census tracts, which are small subdivisions of cities and counties, likely qualify based on poverty, income, food stamp, and social vulnerability criteria, provided they've lived in those neighborhoods for at least 5 years. Ingram says that roughly 1.1 million people, 25% of the state's 4.4 million adults, have lived at the same addresses within those tracts for more than 5 years, according to the state census data. Adding in the state's 327,000 veterans and subtracting the roughly 100,000 veterans who live in the qualifying census tracts brings the total up to 1.3 million adults, or a little over 30% of the total adult population. Stupid. And even the state's conservative at best, because it doesn't include prior cannabis convictions, which number is at least in the tens of thousands and likely hundreds of thousands once family convictions are factored in. But also not included are the hundreds of small farm operators with revenue less than $100,000 a year, or people living in neighborhoods that have experienced disproportionate cannabis enforcement, as a study to determine that has not been released yet. So at the end of this whole thing, while everybody's tallied up, you might have half of Minnesota, if not more than half of Minnesota, that qualifies for social equity. This is stupid. So the estimate also uses a strict definition of time in residence that excludes a number of people who move to a different home in the same census tract. All right, so factors like poverty rate definitions, social vulnerability thresholds, and neighborhood delineations can all affect which geographic areas are ultimately included. Ingram notes that the other states that have used similarly broad definitions in setting up their social equity programs, citing data from the Minority Cannabis Business Association and the MCBA on their part, says the use of non-race criteria and social equity qualifications in these definitions has not yielded diverse cannabis markets. You think? So look, I'm going to call it like it is, and I apologize for anyone offended by my choice of words, but it feels like social equity in cannabis is having its own all lives matter moment. Just like the term woke, which was originally a slang adjective used by people of color as a warning to remain on high alert to racial prejudices and discrimination coming your way. Over the last 4 to 5 years, we've witnessed the real-time gentrification of social equity too. When I marched, participated in rallies, co-produced expungement clinics, used my multiple platforms to help get out the word about social equity back in 2016, 2017 in Los Angeles, or when I assisted with the efforts on the ground through educational clinics and door-knocking campaigns with my counterparts up north in the Bay, both in the city and in the town. The whole philosophy or idea behind social equity in cannabis was rooted in righting the past wrongs of the U.S. government, all levels, federal down to local, for unfairly targeting and over-policing communities of color, which was the primary target of the illegal and racist war on drugs. Social equity is about race. Might not be constitutional, that's another conversation, but it is about race, period. But as we all know by now, and we're seeing this happen in Minnesota, it is not what social equity has become. Diluting the pool of who receives social equity licensure dilutes the term itself and the purpose behind the movement. No offense to U.S. military veterans, the queer community, women entrepreneurs, and/or small farmers, but none of the aforementioned demographic categories of people were not unfairly targeted by cop shops driven by racist police hell-bent on tearing apart the same communities that fund their salaries. Taking away the original focus of social equity in cannabis robs the communities and the countless individuals and families that live in those communities that continue to suffer from the impact and the blowback from the war on drugs. So maybe it's time we just stop using the term social equity altogether, because this is
I've been saying that forever.
I don't know how much money is being is poured into Minnesota's social equity programming, but I can't see how anybody could afford to have all these licenses go to absolutely everybody. But that's just me. I'm Rico Lamitte, the dopest dad on the street for High 9 News.
Well,
what do you guys think?
Just two quick things, Rico. I mean, this must have been written by Oprah, because you get a social equity license and you get a social equity license and you get a social equity license, and not to mention
literally no rules.
Exactly. Right. And this I think is actually the best rollout that we've seen of all socialist equity programs, because this is true socialist equity right here.
Well, you tried to sneak that in there, huh? The socialist equity.
You like that? You like that, Todd? Yeah.
That was clever. Clever.
Yeah, that's what we do over here. High at 9.
Yeah. I think you're right, though, actually, Jason. I think this is the best rollout of a social equity program, because everybody's included, right?
Yep, everyone's included.
It's just silly. It's just silliness.
Well,
right?
they want to make sure that everyone feels included. Because there's so many people that don't feel included. Yeah, hold on. You only get a ribbon for participating.
Right.
Nah, man, you get trophies now, man.
You get the chance to apply for a license. Right?
Let your kid run around crazy and just kick at nothing. Everybody gets.
I'm all for social equity and making up for this horrible war on drugs that we've all lived through, and especially, some people worse than others. How do you do it? That's the problem. Because you really, as a business owner, right, you need to have the money to go run your business. And unless there's federal loans or small business loans that go to these folks or whoever qualifies, what is social equity exactly? Unless they create that. You know what I mean?
We all know what social equity is. We all know what it is.
What is
Tell us. What is it?
It's socialist equity.
All right. Well, beyond that, what is
social equity is a marketing buzzword created by H.G. Fredrickson in Idaho.
That part
back in 1968, a white man in Idaho created social equity. So whoever
he created it as a term.
Yeah, and it was never meant to be like I truly put in practice.
And then all the wokies adopted it.
Yeah, so it's been, like I said, like the term's been gentrified. And
well, can a term be gentrified if it was already coined by a white guy? I mean, like, I'm just asking the question, right? Did it come pre-gentrified? I just want to know. Viewers want to know.
I think
because it wasn't culturally appropriated.
Hold on, Yarrow. I think at that point it would become whitewashed.
Cue the music.
Here's the thing. It was hijacked.
Writing the jokes.
Just saying.
But either way, man, it goes back to my point that, man, like not knowing like the source of what you're actually saying makes a difference, because it can come back to bite you. Like this whole thing's coming back to bite you.
Okay,
and then hold on. You can't go like municipality to municipality and they even agree on what social equity means.
That's right.
So if you can't go from like one town to one town, let alone a state to a state, good luck getting anybody in charge to agreeing what social equity should be. And people are just dancing around the fact that yes, it should be tied to race.
And that's
let me dance around your article for a second, okay? Yeah. There is an argument
came up with the criteria to make it about race. The enforcers, right? So it should be about race, even though it's unconstitutional. That's it. Go ahead.
The argument that social equity might not look the same from state to state, market to market, whatnot, is there's actually a rational basis for that, which is that your constituents look different in different areas. People most impacted look different in different areas, and so there is this I think relatively reasonably thought out line of thinking, which is that there needs to be the ability for local municipalities to craft these programs to represent their constituents in the way that they were impacted. Okay, so I just kind of want to put that out there. The second thing is, that
I say call it something else.
That's right.
Well, I can't say anything if you're just going to jump in over the top of me. I mean, it's your article. Does anybody else besides Jason say anything? So I wanted to support this program because I've always believed that social equity is like the justice system. It's better to see a few guilty people go free than it is to see innocent people be convicted and guilty. And so I've always felt that social equity programs should be a little bit more generous in their interpretation versus excluding people that might be sort of a toss-up in terms of whether they qualify or not. So I went online because I wanted to appreciate Minnesota. I thought maybe Minnesota was like that little stray dog that got kicked and only got to live in the barn and never even got to go inside the house, much as sit on someone's lap by the fireplace. And what I found was that in terms of education, poverty, and healthcare, Minnesota is not at the bottom of the barrel in this country. In fact, it's got really great ratings for a lot of those metrics that we would think of as sort of indicating the overall health and opportunity of the society and the people that live there. So I couldn't find it. And so back to your point, it's likely that these programs should be renamed to be more aligned with what they actually are. Even if the name of social equity came from a white guy, I get it, but like it should just be renamed, because what I do think is worth supporting is a notion separate from the racial component, which was always written out so that it would be supportable if it was litigated against race-based criteria. What I do think is worth supporting is the idea that as a fledgling industry, government support of a fledgling industry is not a bad thing. And so I think about the little baby dolphin. When it's born, the mama dolphin has to keep it up at the surface so it can learn to breathe, right? And so we have this little baby dolphin, fledgling, nascent, regulated industry, and it could use support to be up at the surface and learn to breathe. Now, one obvious way to do that would be to strip away the terrible layers of taxes and other ways in which this industry is being harmed before it's even had an opportunity to get out of the gate. But I don't think that we should say that just because this is a bastardized version of social equity at best, that we shouldn't still continue to say, look, if you want to regulate us, if you want to tax us, if you want us to come out of the shadows and into the light, find a way to support this industry the way government has found a way to support many industries, from technology to farming to research and development. There is this nexus between the sort of private enterprise and government, where government has been instrumental in supporting businesses. And so I think maybe we strip that conversation away. It's a little less charged, and it just says, look, if you're going to go from flying helicopters over our communities and putting people in handcuffs either on the stoop or on the city sidewalk, how do you support this industry? Because the industry does need support. And part of that is more reasonable regulations. Part of that is quicker permitting. Part of that is lower taxes. Part of that is probably a limitation to the local control that Rico touched upon that allows for 27 million varieties of definitions of social equity. But what I do want to say and raise my hand is this industry does need, if it's going to be regulated and actually a functional industry, does need government support. And maybe that government support doesn't need to come masquerading in the cloth of, hey, I'm going to right the wrongs, or hey, there's going to be an extra competitive advantage for some that were disproportionately impacted. But let's just talk about government support for this industry because it needs it.
Mm-hmm. And on that, we're going to go to a commercial and we're going to be right back.